The note read, "You destroyed my life. Now I need your help." Pam Bondi never expected her response would go viral. "Can you spare $1?" The voice was barely audible, a fragile whisper that seemed to dissolve into the cold morning air before it even reached her ears. Pam Bondi, the formidable state attorney known for her razor-sharp intellect and uncompromising courtroom demeanor, stopped dead in her tracks. Her designer heels clicked sharply against the pavement as she turned, her perfectly manicured fingers tightening around the strap of her leather briefcase. The woman crouched against the grimy brick wall of the downtown office building was barely visible, a shadow among shadows, her skeletal frame swallowed by layers of stained clothing. But it was her eyes that struck Pam like a physical blow, wide, desperate, and filled with a kind of broken dignity that made the prosecutor's stomach clench. The cardboard sign propped against the woman's knees told a story in smudged Sharpie. 8 months pregnant, kicked out of shelter, please help. Dozens of busy professionals streamed past without glancing down, their polished shoes stepping over the woman like she was just another piece of urban debris. Pam's first instinct was to join them. She had a sentencing hearing in 40 minutes, a high-profile case that could make her career. But something about the way the woman's chapped lips trembled when she spoke, about the protective way her dirty hands cradled her swollen belly, made Pam hesitate. What happened next would unravel everything Pam thought she knew about justice, about mercy, and about the invisible threads that connect the powerful to the powerless. The stale air of the courthouse had always smelled like victory to Pam, a mix of old paper, wood polish, and the faint metallic tang of handcuffs. For 12 years, she'd strode these marble hallways like a queen, her conviction rate the highest in the state, her reputation for crushing defense attorneys the stuff of legend. But today, as she sat frozen in her BMW just 2 blocks from that pregnant woman, her case files spread across the leather seats, Pam couldn't stop seeing those hollow eyes. With shaking hands, she pulled up the database on her laptop, typing in the name stitched on the woman's frayed backpack, Maria Gutierrez. The screen populated instantly. Multiple misdemeanors, failure to appear, probation violation. And then Pam saw it, her own initials beside the most recent charge. PP had prosecuted Maria 6 months ago for stealing $27 worth of diapers and formula from a 24-hour pharmacy. Pam had argued for jail time, send a message to shoplifters, and won. Now Maria's unborn child would enter the world while its mother slept under highway overpasses. The gavel had fallen, but the real sentence had just begun. For both of them. Rain began to patter against the windshield as Pam sat paralyzed, watching droplets distort the city outside. She remembered Maria's case now, the way the young mother had wept silently throughout the trial, the way the public defender had begged for leniency, citing postpartum depression and an abusive ex who'd vanished with their savings. Pam had rolled her eyes, dismissing it as the usual sob story. Now the memory made her skin crawl. Her phone buzzed insistently, her assistant, no doubt wondering why she wasn't answering his frantic calls about the judge waiting on her. With sudden clarity, Pam knew she couldn't walk into that courtroom today. Not like this. Not while Maria sat hungry in the storm. Throwing the car into park, she grabbed her umbrella and marched back toward the alley, her expensive shoes splashing through oily puddles. When she found Maria still huddled there, now shivering violently, Pam didn't offer money. She extended a hand. "Come with me," she said, her voice rougher than she intended. Maria flinched, her arms wrapping tighter around her belly. "I'm not going back to jail," she whispered. Pam's throat tightened. In that moment, she understood how thoroughly she'd failed. Not just Maria, but the very ideal of justice she'd sworn to uphold. The shelter director eyed Pam skeptically as she helped Maria into a chair, the young woman's wet clothes leaving puddles on the linoleum. "You're the Pam Bondi?" the director asked, her tone dripping with disbelief. Pam nodded stiffly, acutely, aware of how absurd she must look, this high-powered prosecutor dripping rainwater onto her $800 blazer while clutching the arm of a homeless pregnant woman. The director's expression hardened. "We're full. Have been for months. Budget cuts." Pam set her jaw, then uncut them. She pulled out her phone, dialing a number from memory. 15 minutes later, after a terse conversation with the mayor's chief of staff, Maria had a bed, a hot meal, and an appointment with the shelter's prenatal care nurse. Pam watched as Maria tentatively touched the clean sheets of her temporary cot, her fingers trembling as if afraid the whole thing might vanish. "Why?" Maria finally asked, her dark eyes searching Pam's face. "Why help me now?" Pam had no answer. Or rather, she had too many, none of which could undo what she'd already done. That night, Pam sat in her luxury high-rise apartment, staring blankly at the skyline twinkling beyond her floor-to-ceiling windows. Her untouched takeout sat congealing on the coffee table beside Maria's case file, which she'd pulled in its entirety from the archives. Page after page revealed what she'd been too busy, too arrogant, to notice during the trial. Hospital. Records showing Maria had sought treatment for domestic violence. Bank statements proving her ex had drained their accounts. A pediatrician's note about her toddler's failure to thrive after being weaned too early when Maria couldn't afford formula. Pam's hands shook as she reached for her scotch. The ice long, melted. On her wall, framed newspaper clippings touted her toughest prosecutions now seemed to leer at her. Pondis gets 10-year sentence for single mom in welfare fraud case. The truth was undeniable. She'd built her career on the backs of people like Maria, people who needed help, not handcuffs. Dawn found Pam pacing outside the shelter, her briefcase stuffed not with trial prep, but with printouts about housing assistance. Programs. When Maria emerged, blinking in the morning light, Pam didn't mince words. "I'm getting your kids back." Maria's knees buckled. Her toddler was in foster care. Her newborn would be taken at birth if she didn't have stable housing. Over the next weeks, Pam became a woman possessed, calling in favors from judges, strong-arming social workers, even paying Maria's back rent out of pocket when bureaucracy moved too slowly. Her colleagues whispered. Her conviction rate plummeted. The media speculated about her sudden change of heart, but Pam barely noticed. For the first time in her career, she wasn't chasing wins. She was fixing wrongs. The family court judge peered over his glasses as Pam stood beside Maria, their unlikely alliance now in its third month. "Ms. Pondis," he said dryly, "I don't recall seeing your name on our appointed counsel list." Pam lifted her chin. "I'm here as a friend of the court, Your Honor." What followed was the most unorthodox and most powerful argument of her career. She cited studies about trauma-informed sentencing. She quoted restorative justice principles. And then she did something no one expected. She apologized. "The state failed this family," she said, her voice cracking. "I failed them." The gallery erupted. By day's end, Maria had reunification services, subsidized housing, and, most precious of all, weekly visits with her toddler son. When the boy came barreling into Maria's arms for the first time in 6 months, Pam turned away, her vision blurring. This was what justice looked like. Pam's resignation letter shocked the legal community. Effective immediately, it read with no explanation. Only Maria understood when Pam showed up at her new apartment with boxes of files and a determined gleam in her eye. Together, they founded Second Chances, a non-profit that paired former prosecutors with people they'd convicted, working to undo systemic harm case by case. The first time a reporter asked why she'd walked away from power, Pam gestured to Maria, now rocking her newborn while helping another woman fill out housing paperwork. "I finally learned the difference between winning cases and doing justice," she said softly. "So tell me, when did your certainty last crumble? What moment forced you to rewrite everything you thought you knew?" The comments are open. Share your story. And if this made you question who really pays the price for law and order, hit share because change begins when we dare to see the people behind the case numbers.